This is Sheila Nolt.
Good?
Back one more.
Okay.
Trial and error.
Is that better? Okay. September 1st, 1939. I will never forget this date. It all started when the Nazis invaded the capital of Poland. My name is Ida Hans. I'd lived in Warsaw, Poland my whole life. I hadn't known anything different. Me, a little innocent girl, dragged into war like I never would have wanted. On my 16th birthday, I got a diary from my parents. I loved writing it about school, home life, family, and volleyball. But one day, that all changed. Even after the war started, I loved to write in my journal. It was a safe place where I could confine my innermost thoughts. I brought one of my entries along today. I wrote this when the war first started. It goes, October 5th, 1939. Dear Diary, a lot has happened since I last wrote in you. About 5 weeks. My life has seemed to change in the twinkling of an eye. On September 1st, 1939, the Nazis invaded our country. I'm so scared to go out of the house. It seems like the soldiers stay in the corners of every street. Their guns are so intimidating. Today at school, we had an assembly. We all gathered in the front room. That is the biggest room in our school. Our knees and hands were shaking of fear. We never had assemblies. The only time we have assemblies is once in a blue moon. We settled down in chairs, our knees bouncing up and down of nervousness. The principal walked up in front of the students. It was so quiet you could hear a pin drop. He looked grave and was pacing nervously. As you know, he said, our country is in a time of war. We all solemnly nodded our heads. He continued, I'm going to give you one piece of advice. He shifted nervously. Taking a deep breath, he started again. If any of you happen to get sent to a concentration camp, I want you to try your hardest to be a cook. Remember this, a cook never goes hungry. Then he paused. The assembly had ended as fast as it had started. We walked back to class in a daze. As I was walking home after school, my mind kept going back to assembly. What was going to happen? What if I got sent to a concentration camp? But my biggest question was, what did my future hold for me? As you can see, life was getting, I guess, what you might call hard. Imagine coming to that state in life where you just start wondering how much time you have left to live. That's how I felt. A lesson I learned throughout my struggles is that no matter how hard times get, if you have enough determination, you can live through the heartbreaking times. Unfortunately, on November 3rd, 1939, the Nazis overtook the store that my dad had owned. After that, things just went downhill. One night, as we were sleeping in bed, I got awakened by a loud knocking on the door. I stood up and crept to the window. The Nazis were here. They took my whole family, my dad, my mom, and me. My parents and me were sent to different concentration camps. When I got off the car, I saw smoke rising in the distance. As a brave 16-year-old, I asked an SS officer what the smoke was. He replied, I guess the cook must have burnt a loaf of bread today. I was horrified when I later found out what the smoke actually was. I was assigned to be a cook and never once got too hungry. I always considered myself lucky that I had ended up with this job. As Germany started losing, the SS officers took everybody in the concentration camps and marched them closer to Germany. We were marching one night, and it got so dark I could barely see. The moon was only a sliver. I slipped and fell in a ditch face down in the snow. I was so starved, I didn't move. A Nazi soldier shot at me and the bullet hit my arm. He must have not been able to aim clearly because of the darkness. Also, thinking that I was dead, he didn't shoot again. I waited until the last person had marched over the hill and out of sight. I then slowly stood up and started the treacherous journey through the woods, trying to find my home. I later reunited with my parents. We then moved to America about 2 years ago. Some people may think it's a difficult decision, deciding if they should move to a new country, but for me, it was a new start, away from my horrible past. My hope is that everyone will be treated equal in this new country, and that this tragic Holocaust will never happen again. Quoted by Eli Wiesel, how does one mourn for 6 million people who died? How many candles does one light? How many prayers does one recite? Do we know how to remember the victims, their solitude, their helplessness? They left us without a trace, yet we are their trace.